Here we go. Great to be back. Look, Tony, appreciate you joining me today. This is the first podcast we've recorded this year of running with the Mules. It is just me and you today. Unfortunately, Adam couldn't join us with his sort of commitments and time differences over in China. So it is just two of us. Look, where you are, and we'll go into it in more detail later on. You know, so many people already throughout the Salesforce ecosystem do know who you are. But just as way of a quick introduction into yourself and what you've done.
Well, I wouldn't say so many people, but I am trying to show up positively in my professional community and, make valuable connections. My name is Tony Kirumba, and I'm currently a Salesforce developer at Boston Beer Company. You've heard of us, Sam Adams, Truly, Twisted Tea, Angry Orchard, and Dogfish Head. I am a member of the Salesforce team, and we are using Consumer Goods Cloud to build tools for retail execution. So that is what folks who are going out and visiting retail stores use to record their achievements, to keep track of contacts and who they're interacting with. And that's the piece of the platform that I work in today. Before then, I was a consultant at Baobab Partners, and the job was very similar, sort of technical consultant, taking on the more advanced technical capabilities that we built out, and leaned very strongly towards third-party integrations. So I was the person that they would come talk to when we needed to build a new integration or figure out how to work with a new API, which ultimately led to my interest and exploration of MuleSoft.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Tony. And yeah, look, exactly why I I think came after you a few times to ask you to come on here with me. But it is to provide some more insight into that question that I'm being asked more and more. Loads of people are seeing across the ecosystem more and more of a hybrid skill set of MuleSoft development combined with Salesforce development. And, I know that's something you've looked at yourself over the, not just recently, I think even pre-Boston Beer, you've been looking at yourself. And I think nowhere better to hear it from than someone that's on that journey at the minute, has picked that up. But how have you done that? What was your introduction to MuleSoft? Because you come from Salesforce background initially, right? And now coming into more MuleSoft focus.
Started at a Salesforce background. You can still hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Started at a Salesforce background and only really picked up Mules seriously, I would say, late 2021. And for me, it was a natural evolution of the role that I played in the Salesforce ecosystem, which was developer, heavily focused on third-party integrations. So I would say I got into the Salesforce ecosystem and learned how to build and customize solutions on Salesforce, and then was steered towards, we need to connect with some third-party system, and that connection might be shallow, it might be deep, and then ultimately started to look at what is the wider world of integrations, and how does a middleware platform like MuleSoft play into that world. And so in 2022, this was very much as I was sort of looking at my CV and looking at how I wanted to skill forward. I would say big picture, my ideal job would be something like integration architect, right? I would be the person who would be brought into a complex organization to stitch all of their systems together into one beautiful network of connections that talk to each other and drive value for the business. I've seen what it means to go from having an organization where getting something from point A to B means someone having to send an email and that email getting lost and that email not getting responded to and so on, all the way to we have two systems that talk to each other seamlessly, and we don't need to worry about the interconnections between them because the integration is bulletproof. And so with picking up MuleSoft, it was, here is a platform that at least claims to have the capability to get to that gold standard. What does that actually look like? What does it look like to build on the MuleSoft platform? And so 2022 spent a good chunk of time going through the Anypoint Platform Foundation course, which ultimately leads to the MuleSoft Developer 1 certification. So that was the last point that I left off with my MuleSoft journey. Finishing the course and then taking that certification.
Yeah, okay. And was all that was sort of self-learning from your side initially?
That was all self-learning. When I first started looking into MuleSoft out of interest, and then looked at different options for skilling up in MuleSoft. And the one that appealed to me the most was the self-learning. for two reasons. One, obviously, it's a self-paced course, and so that gives me a lot of flexibility. Actually, I remember starting the course, leaving it off maybe a month in just because life took over, and then being able to come back and not quite pick up where I left off, but being able to go back and say, okay, I remember chapter one, I remember chapter two, let's pick up from chapter three and move on. And then the big kicker for me was, and I assume that this is still the case, completing the Anypoint Platform Foundation course gives you a gives you 2 free takes for the exam. So for me, that just made perfect sense. You're giving me a free option to take the exam if I can guarantee to you that I know the content really well. That made perfect sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, from on the other side of the coin, I think I said to you before, I recently did my first Salesforce certification, and yeah, again, self-paced learning through the back of that, and I think all the materials are there, and that's like for people to come in and learn, and picking that up. What do you think that did from your experiences and sort of where you kind of then were able to see patterns and development and that side, you picking that up, you now know, you have your experience as a Salesforce developer, you now are understanding more on actual MuleSoft development as well. How did that benefit you in terms of the roles you were taking on?
Well, a couple of ways. The big one is I think it rounded out my skill set and my profile in a really valuable way. So when I was competing for jobs with other folks who have just as much skill as me, or sort of their resume looks just as good as mine when it comes to their Salesforce bona fides, I have this extra thing that is really valuable to a lot of organizations, especially at the enterprise level. There's a lot of organizations that are Salesforce customers and MuleSoft customers. And so that just makes you a better fit for the organization on a technical level and gives you that extra edge. And it's a tough job market out there, so you need that edge. And then actually getting into the organization, I'm not a MuleSoft developer. We have an integrations team at Boston Beer. But what that experience has done is it makes it easy to converse with that team on their level. So I'm able to make requests when I'm making a request to update or to build a new integration, it's coming from a place of expertise and experience where we're able to speak the same language, and I can sort of navigate the request really well for them. One example is I have a good sense of the logging capabilities that MuleSoft offers. And so when I'm making a request or putting together requirements for a new integration, part and parcel of that is here's what I need to see back in Salesforce after this piece of data goes upstream. Here's what I need in terms of email logging, in terms of a dashboard where I can look at the API's performance without having spent the time that I have in skilling up on MuleSoft. That would be a black box to me. I would really just be saying, I have this piece of data. Can you pick it up and put it somewhere else?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think you understand, the importance of this, in terms of when companies are hiring, right, is finding someone that understands both. And where do you see, because you mentioned there, developing in both and connecting into both are different things.
Very different things.
So how beneficial do you find actually, on that side? You're not just connecting something in, like you say, you've got developers, you understand what they're doing their side now, as opposed to just bring these two things together?
Yeah, I'd say, so zooming all the way out, MuleSoft is an incredible platform in and of itself before the acquisition by Salesforce. The reason why Salesforce acquired it is because it's a best-in-class middleware platform with best-in-class tools for building middleware integrations. And so being able to being able to build Mule flows, orchestrate Mule APIs, get into it's not the App Exchange. What is it? What is that thing called? The Mule Store. What's the name of it? Getting into the Mule Store where they host and publish all of their APIs and the design center, you get to see a world of technology that looks very different from the Salesforce world of technology. And I'd say so one of the ways in which that has changed the game for me is when building Mule flows on one side and Salesforce flows on the other. In both cases, you're using a low-code platform that ultimately becomes an XML or a set of XML files that are the actual code. And just seeing the way that Mule puts together its low-code tooling, I'd say Mule does a really good job of pushing you to be really concrete and modular in the way that you build flows in a way that Salesforce Flow does not. So when I'm building a Mule flow, right from the training, right from the tooling, right from the jump, I'm thinking about orchestrating it as little modules that compose together. So I'm calling an API. I have the section of my MuleFlow that is listening, and then I have the section of my MuleFlow that has logic. That MuleFlow logic might have specific subflows inside of it that it's calling that could be called by anything else. And then ultimately we're returning some response and we're orchestrating the way that we return a response. That has really made a big difference in the way that I consider my Salesforce development. Because now it's not just one big Salesforce flow, it's modular components that I'm putting together into a Salesforce flow, same way that I would Mule. So it's just one side of it is the technology is different. It was built differently. You can see the design of the technology is different. And so that has broadened my skill set. And then the other side of it is when I'm building in Mule, Mule doesn't own any of the data. Mule is an orchestrator. So I'm thinking about what is the source of the data? How do I manage this source of data? How do I transform this data? Which is sort of a different mindset than Salesforce, where the data is mine and I'm trying to manage and own it. So it's sort of different mentalities about data and then different mentalities about how the technology is built that inform each other back and forth.
Sure. And look, I mean that and you know, taking that into account and running a role in that way is very different to how you know, I guess you'd have done previously without having that MuleSoft insight from that side. So, you know, what were the biggest challenges, I guess, in picking that up? Was it sort of a change of approach? Was it the actual skill set to pick up the tech side? You know, where did you find it hardest, I guess?
I might be a bit biased in this regard, and tell me your experience as well. The biggest challenge for me, honestly, was how dry the training materials are. I've gotten spoiled by Trailhead, and it's colorful, and it's gamified, and it's hands-on, and there's all different levels of skill set. You can attack it at all different levels of skill set, from a hands-on challenge where they're walking you through step by step, all the way to a super badge. And then you switch over to the Mule side, and it's very comprehensive, but it is incredibly dry, and it was a struggle to get through, especially in a self-paced course by myself, just taking time out of my weekend to do it. That said, the tooling itself was really widely available. It's just little things like having your Mule version or having your Mule account expire after a little while, just little frustrations here and there. But as a whole, the training material is very comprehensive if you can get through how dry it is.
Yeah, I think, and again, because I'm going back 5 years, there's been so many changes in the last sort of 5.5 years across that side of things, and I think back in this year, a lot of that content is now on Trailhead. I think a lot of it has been moved over. I know they revamped all the training side, sort of semi recently, and yeah, a lot of, as you say there, the Trailhead stuff previously didn't include the MuleSoft learning. I think it does now, or at least sort of the vast majority of it has been moved over.
Yeah, it looks like it's now part and parcel of Trailhead.
Exactly, and then yeah, you know, it then comes with, as you say, all the bells and whistles of Trailhead. You know, it's much more interactive and colourful, you know, and to get people along that side, because look, I do think it's incredibly hard for, you know, like I say, look, I've got so many businesses that are reaching out to me saying, you know, we've got this position, but it's not going to be 100% MuleSoft. It's not going to be 100% Salesforce. We need somebody that can do more than connect the two. We need somebody that can develop in both. And you've got developers on both sides that want to do it. But it is just that, how do I go and do it? And like you say, that self-paced learning is sometimes, especially if somebody's already working as a Salesforce developer, and maybe in their current role or current company, they're not using MuleSoft, or they've got, you know, another team using MuleSoft. They don't have access to doing that side, so they have to go and do the self-paced learning and to pick that up. The same, you know, flip side of the coin for Muleys that want to come into Salesforce and pick some of that. You know, absolutely. And I think the self-paced learning is the best way to do it. Like I say, I did the self-paced learning for my Salesforce certification as well. And, you know, the materials are there. And I know, as I say, so many people know, because you obviously run the Boston user group for Salesforce as well. You know, and I get running the New York meetup group for MuleSoft, see the value in that. You know, how much do you think the community supports on that side of picking up these additional skill sets and picking up, you know, additional certifications?
Well, the community aspect is huge. And I think, so when I did my Mule training and my Mule certification, that was a solo journey. To your point, my company at the time was not a MuleSoft customer. So this really was, I see a future here. I'm going to pursue this future. I'm going to pursue skilling up. I'm going to pursue training. I'm going to pursue certification. And I've gone back and said over and over to myself, if I had a community going on that journey with me, that would have made a huge difference. So as dry as the training material was, if I had friends to discuss that with, like I do in the Salesforce ecosystem, that would have made a big difference in the journey. So I think community is absolutely crucial. And for me, the root of it, the reason why I got involved with the dev group, the reason why I enjoy getting together for meetups and things like that, is it's fun. I think it's important to find opportunities to have fun with your profession. I sit in front of my two screens and look at code all day, and having opportunities to get together with real human beings, either in person or virtual, but just have a sense of community, have a sense of I'm not going it alone. I have my own styles of things. I can talk to people about the problems that I encounter. That in and of itself is huge. Whether or not, before you even get to this group of people has specific expertise in the thing that I'm pursuing, just having a group of people to talk over your challenges, talk over your journey with is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially because MuleSoft is a more niche product. It's a much smaller market than Salesforce. And so from that direction, if you're a Salesforce professional looking to upskill into MuleSoft, there's a good chance that your organization does not use MuleSoft at the moment. Well, that's where community comes in to plug that gap.
100%, and I completely agree. Like you say, on both sides, like you say, the amount of people that are sat, like say you have your two screens, you're sat there for how many hours a day and a week, and that community is the chance to go and speak to other people doing the same thing, or speak to somebody that's doing what you'd like to do. Like you say, if there's not a, you know, you could be using MuleSoft or Salesforce, and you know your company isn't a customer of the other side, so there's nobody else in your organization that's doing the other side. Nobody for you to learn from, to speak to, for you to engage with. And you know, I think the amount of times that topics, we have a set topic for a meetup, but that as it unravels, you go down a rabbit hole of so many different areas, and you learn from experiences and, you know, project stories and deliverable that other people have been working on, similar to you, different to you, what you've got coming up. You can ask questions from people that have been there and done it, the journey they've been on, you know, all of that side. So yeah,
it gives the whole thing some momentum.
Exactly.
I'm curious from your perspective. So you have organizations that are coming to you and saying, we have projects, we have work that is not just Salesforce, it's not just MuleSoft, it needs someone who can be hands-on with both. And you have a talent that is looking to cross-skill into Salesforce or into MuleSoft to give themselves that extra edge from the organization side. So our organization saying, we need a Salesforce developer who can plug into our MuleSoft architecture or our MuleSoft API network? Or are they saying we need a MuleSoft developer who can also get into the CRM and do what needs to be done with the data once it's in there? What direction is this coming from, and what is the need, or what's the driving force behind having cross-skilled people?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question, Tony, to be honest. I think it comes from both directions, and where I've seen it become more and more apparent is, you know, look, traditionally we go back however many years MuleSoft's been around for now, and it's always been an enterprise level product, right? It's always been in there. It's been your big multinational organizations that really
30 different systems that need to stitch together.
Yeah, all that interconnectivity, all that, you know, you need that API there. That's where you're using MuleSoft. You're using all the strings and bows that come with it, and that side. And what we've started to see more of, as you know, MuleSoft has you know, come more into the Salesforce ecosystem and being sold as part of their different packages, is you now have companies that aren't enterprise level that are using MuleSoft, and you know, these are companies that don't need to go and build a, you know, an 8-10 person strong you know, C4E team of however many developers, architects, etc. across, because of how they're using it and what they're going to use it and what they're connecting, how much data they've got. And what I've seen recently on both sides of the coin is you know, heads of architecture or heads of Salesforce platform is say to me, look, I need to make 2 hires, but I've only got space for 1. And the reason for that is because I haven't got a full-time, you know, a 40-hour-a-week Salesforce developer role. I haven't got a full-time 40-hour-a-week MuleSoft developer role. With what we're doing, with our projects coming up, yeah, I need somebody that can do MuleSoft, but that's maybe, you know, 15-20 hours of the week. I then need somebody on our, for our Salesforce admin side, or maybe some Apex development, that's 15, 20 hours a week. I don't have the budget sign off. We can't go out and hire 2 people for roles that aren't, a full-time.
2 full-time jobs, yeah.
We can hire 1. How can we find somebody that can do both? And, and then I speak to people, on the candidate side, developers that are saying, look, I've done some, I've done some connecting to Salesforce. I'm working as a MuleSoft developer. I've done some connecting to Salesforce, but I've never actually built anything in Salesforce. I've connected it, but then it kind of goes away from me because that's what there's another team. How can I learn that? Or flip side, Salesforce that we're using MuleSoft for all our data and that side. That looks really interesting, but all I'm doing is seeing the front side of it. I'm not seeing what these guys are doing behind the. I want to learn that. How can I get into that? And also, with that, the question of, would I advance my career if I could do both? And at the minute, from what a lot of businesses are saying to me, it is yes. There is a demand for people that can do both, because and the difference is, I think the difference has always been, or traditionally, was how technical you needed to be for, if you go back to from Mule 3.x, you really needed to come from that core software,
that Java background,
Java, Python stuff, background, Spring Hive, all of that microservices. You still need to understand that side for MuleSoft, but a little less. MuleSoft is now pushed towards more, sort of lower code on that side. Some companies, yes, if they're still using microservice architecture and MuleSoft, you're going to need the core fundamentals of it. And really, I guess if you're coding in any sense, you should have anyway. If you're working in Apex, it's all going to cross-reference somewhere. But with the learning, as we spoke about earlier, the training that's available, you can learn things like RAML, like data weave, like the things you need to learn MuleSoft if you're a Salesforce developer, without having to come from that, computer science core, 5-6 year Java experience background. And I think the same with Salesforce. If you're a MuleSoft developer, if you do the learning as suggested by Salesforce, you should be able to pick up whether it's admin, Apex development, architecture work within Salesforce as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say to that is, considering the relationship between these 2 technologies, it really is about finding your entry point. So the entry point for me into MuleSoft was Mule flows, because Mule flows are what you use to orchestrate API and to orchestrate middleware integrations. And so there's what is it? Remote process activation. There's robot frameworks, what is it? How do you say
robotic process automation?
Robotic process automation. There's hyper automation. There's a lot of infrastructure work that you can do with MuleSoft. Those are all areas of MuleSoft that I basically ignored to begin with and just focused on Mule flows and API orchestration. And now that I'm in, there's an opportunity to look at robotic process automation. There's an opportunity to look at hyper automation and so on. So it really is about finding your entry point. You can't, same thing with Salesforce, you can't take it all on at once. And for a Mule developer, especially if you're a Mule flow developer, if you're setting up APIs and orchestrating data, then the entry point for you really is Apex and Flow. Flow is, so if you're very comfortable in the low-code world and you're comfortable handling data and transforming data, then Salesforce Flow is a very closely related tool that you can tap into, and from there start building out. So if I'm a Mule developer and I'm looking to broaden my skill set by interacting more with Salesforce at my organization, ask to build a Salesforce Flow. You know the low-code world really well. You know how to orchestrate data in that low-code way. And from there, you'll have exposure to the platform. You'll have exposure to how the platform is organized and architected, and you go from there. And same thing the other way. About the can I advance my career by cross-skilling? So on one hand, yes, but on the other hand, and this has proven very true for me in the past year or so, there's underlying skills which are more important. So understanding part of it is, if I'm a Salesforce developer, for example, can I abstract away from the Salesforce jargon and from the Salesforce technology to how are we building? What does it mean to set up a database, to do sharing and security, to implement automation, to connect to third-party APIs? And then can I take all of that knowledge, all of those underlying patterns, and apply them to a new stack like MuleSoft? What does authentication look like in this new stack? What does data orchestration look like in this new stack? What does governance, governing my limits look like in this new stack? And say same thing. So then that then broadens you out. So you're not just MuleSoft or Salesforce, you're a solid platform developer, whatever the platform may be of the day. Because Salesforce and MuleSoft will go away someday. Hopefully not soon, but they will go away someday. But the underlying patterns remain. And then the other thing is problems. So I have always said, and this has again proven true even today, that integration projects don't fail because of the data. They don't fail because I'm calling some system and passing data to it and getting something back. They fail because of a misunderstanding or an underestimation of the problem we're trying to solve by doing this integration. So a really good real world example is, do I want these two systems to reflect each other directly? Or does there need to be an interplay between these two systems where something happens upstream, it comes down, something happens downstream, it flows up? Those are very different integrations that require a different approach versus I just need these two systems to always say the same thing because upstream says A, downstream has to say A. So the part of it is learning the technology. The other part of it is having a good handle on the problems that drive organizations to why does an organization need a MuleSoft? Why does an organization need a Salesforce? Can you speak to that problem? And now you have hands-on experience, you're in golden. That's gold standard.
Yeah. No, I think absolutely. And I remember, and when I post this, actually, I'll include the link. A couple of years back now, I did a kind of a getting into MuleSoft. I guess it wasn't really a training delivery, but entry to training remotely. It was the back end of the pandemic, with one of the senior instructors, Alex Steedham, over at MuleSoft, and a few other people that I knew. And he made the point at the time, as you say there, look, if you're a Salesforce developer, if you're a software engineer, or if you're anything, you're not bringing MuleSoft in to replace what you know. You're not bringing it in to do it instead of what you're doing now. You're bringing this in as another string to your bow. You're bringing this in as
exactly
another, the same as Salesforce. You're not replacing what you already know. You're just adding to it, and
you're extending it.
Exactly, you're extending what you know. You probably, and if you're a software engineer, you're still gonna want to know. You go down the route of AWS, Azure, GCP. The software engineering skills. These aren't replacement skills; these are just additions. And yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. Awesome. Do you have one? If I just wrap us up as well, so do you have one sort of top tip for anybody? Look, you're on this journey at the minute. If anybody's sort of watching this from either side, one top tip for somebody that wants to follow that.
I think the biggest thing for me was having some goal that you're trying to get to. I would not have picked up Mule if I wasn't deeply motivated to pursue this integration architect role eventually. So I think, and especially especially for folks who are cross-skilling, that really has to be, that there needs to be some deep driving personal reason that will get you through the obstacles, because learning a new piece of technology is tough. It's a new language, it's new dynamics. I remember when my Mule flow broke for the first time and I had to debug it. I was like, what is this jar? What is this pom.xml? Nothing is where I expect it to be. That is part of the course for learning any new piece of technology. The thing that gets you through is the why. Why is it valuable for me to gain this skill, to have solid hands-on experience with this platform? So a deep well that you can go back to, because you need a deep well in order to be skilled with, especially cross-skilling and sort of undoing some of the things that you know to relearn them, and especially when it breaks, because that's always when push comes to shove with technology. When you're building it and it's following its happy path, you just feel like a magician. You're like, oh, I'm a wizard. I can do anything. And then it breaks and you have to fix it, and you really have to dig deep and find a good reason to stick with it and to get through the frustration, to ultimately get to a point where you are a cross-skilled hybrid resource who is really well suited for jobs like this, where an organization is saying, I can't hire two people. There's not that many people who have this hybrid skill set that I need. If you're that one person, then that's a really great place to be. But what's going to get you there? There has to be some deep driving reason to get you there. So find your why, find a why that's deep enough to get you through the frustration, and then just get in. Because besides that, it's not a question of access. Access is available. Go to training.mulesoft.com. Everything is available. It's really just a question of what's going to get you through.
Awesome. Perfect. Tony, I really appreciate that. Look, I think it's been massively insightful. I think it will answer the question for a lot of people what I'm being asked around at the minute. Thank you for spending the time with me. Look, I appreciate you're at TDX next week. I'm hoping that you are going to come down to New York for World Tour so we can catch up face to face as well. I will keep you updated on that. But no, look, Tony, really appreciate your time. And yeah, look, if anybody that obviously isn't already a member that is wants to join in on your Boston News group, we can maybe post the link for them to sign up as well for the
Yes, please do. If you're in our area, we'd love to have you. We are building the group back up after COVID and gaining lots of steam and momentum. It's a great time. You can find us on the Trailblazer community site. If you just look up the Boston area, you'll see all of the Boston area groups. And I would recommend joining all of them. We collaborate really closely. When the dev group is getting together, the architect groups are right there and the admin group is right there. And we're building a nice little community for ourselves in the Boston area.
Awesome. Perfect. Tony, thank you again.
Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate your time.
See you, Jonathan.
See you.